Yo, what a crazy game of football that was. What a crazy game of football we witnessed between Lazio and AC Milan. And yes, AC Milan won the game by a goal to nil. AC Milan were able to edge a bad-tempered contest, with Lazio away from home at the Stadio Olimpico. And remember, AC Milan now end a 2-game winless run. But what an incredible game of football. I mean, it was just crazy. It's just insane. It's beyond me. To even think about it, it's beyond me. Because AC Milan, yes, they grabbed their first victory in 4 matches when substitute Okafor finally broke the deadlock with just 3 minutes from time. And that was the time when they already had the one-man advantage, right? So, to cut things short, Lazio had 3 players sent off. 3. And which means they were down to 8 men. So, it was Noah Okafor's late goal that actually secured the 1-0 victory for AC Milan in a chaotic encounter at the Stadio Olimpico, right? So, first things first. AC Milan, now they grabbed their first win in 4 matches, a run which has actually seen, their already faint hopes of a title challenge completely fade away. When substitute Okafor finally broke the deadlock just 3 minutes from time. The match turned in favor when Lazio's Luca Pellegrini needlessly got himself sent off, with over half an hour to play. I think it was a matter of he thought that was supposed to be a foul, right? He thought that a teammate got fouled and that the referee was supposed to give a foul. That's why he just got frustrated, right? But that was not necessary. Remember, you have to understand that if the referee, as a professional footballer, you must also understand the fact that it has to go with the referee. If the referee blows his whistle and calls for a foul, then you can stop the game. You can't just stop the game simply because you feel like your teammate was impeded, but the referee didn't blow the whistle, and you decide to want to stop the game. Of course, you're going to get yourself sent off, right? And Lazio completely lost their minds in the stoppage time as well. And they finished with 8 men after Adam Marusic as well as Matteo Guendouzi were also dismissed. So now Lazio, they will be traveling to Bayern Munich on Tuesday, looking to protect their 1-goal advantage from the first leg of their Champions League clash, where, basically they are now inches away from taking the lead after 10 minutes, right? We talk about Lazio in this particular game against the Rossoneri. Remember Felipe Anderson, flicked on a Luis Alberto corner against Mateus Vecino. He prodded the ball narrowly wide from the far post. That was a great header, great cross, great worked effort, but unfortunately he just couldn't find the target, that Vecino, the Uruguayan. They were then denied a penalty, moments later when the AC Milan goalkeeper Mike Magnan, took a poor touch from a back pass and then wiped out Valentin Castellanos, with his follow-through, but nothing was given either on the field or in the VAR room. Let me address that point. There was no penalty. That's not a penalty because Castellanos, he is the one who bumped into the Magnan. You understand? He's the one who bumped into Magnan because Magnan didn't do anything. He didn't commit a foul. He was the one who bumped into him and he decided just to take a tumble, right? There's no penalty there. That was not a penalty at all. I sincerely disagree. The decision was spot on by VAR as well as the referee. There was no penalty there, right? Moving on, AC Milan did as well get their first chance, right? So it arrived when former Roma right back Alessandro Florenzi, crossed the ball for Olivier Giroud, but the Frenchman's header was just narrowly off target. And then Giroud from that point onwards, he should have put the visitors ahead in the first half, of stoppage time. After Kristjan Pulisic, drive was actually pushed over the crossbar by Ivan Provedel, and then Theo Hernandez swung in the corner, but Giroud's header, at the far post flew harmlessly over the bar. From that particular moment in time, you're like, okay, fine, AC Milan are starting to grow more into the game, but it was just not enough, and Lazio were actually reduced to 10 men afterwards, just before the hour when Pellegrini, who was booked 7 minutes earlier for a foul on Pulisic, was actually sent off, for blatantly pulling back the former Chelsea man, unnecessarily so. That was just really unnecessary, honestly, from Pulisic. And moments later, we saw Giroud, he played a 1-2 with Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but he could only hit his shot straight at Provedel. Provedel, I guess you could say he could have been the man of the match because he showed some great reactions, He got a hand on Loftus-Cheek's volley before the 10 men had a golden chance, to actually go ahead. When substitute Ciro Immobile somehow missed the target from 4 yards out, and a man of his caliber, a man who's on so much fire, would you would never expect him to actually miss from there. And from that particular moment in time, AC Milan took the lead. But unfortunately, that lead was cut short. 13 minutes from time, Rafael Leao scored from a tight angle. But then, due to a lengthy video assistant referee check, it ruled out the effort for offside, unfortunately. But then the goal finally, it did come, after Provedel made another fine one-hand save to actually keep out Okafor's initial drive. But Lazio could not clear the loose ball, and they were punished, when it fell to Okafor once again. And this time, the Switzerland international forward lashed into the net. He did not make any mistake this time by firing the ball into the net, and the match ended with a farce when basically two more Lazio players were sent off, which is Murisic as well as Guendouzi. And it was at the death, as AC Milan held on for a hard-fought 1-0 victory away from home at the Stadio Olimpico. And in other Serie A, action, we saw Fiorentina, held by a 10-man Torino, and which actually dents, the European, qualification hopes, as we saw the substitute Samuele Ricci was actually sent off, for Torino. And Fiorentina were held to a 0-0 stalemate by 10-man Torino. So they failed to capitalize on the one-man advantage. And as Viola's European quest, took a dent once again. Vicenzo, Italiano side, who remain in 7th with this draw, could have closed the gap on Atalanta in 6th, but are now 4 points adrift. Samuele Ricci was sent off as the host, he was sent off for the host, and that was basically for 2 bookable offenses in as many minutes, while Duvan Zapata had a goal ruled out for a push on Nikola Milankovic. So, there was so much drama in this particular game, but I'm very disappointed in the fact that Fiorentina did not make that one-man advantage count, because this is a team that, if they're really serious, if they want to put themselves in for European contention next season, whether it's for the Champions League, whether it's for Europa League or the UEFA Conference League, they really need to, get those results. They need to get 3 points, get as many points on board as possible, because now, for the fact that they were held to a 0-0 stalemate by Torino as their quest, which results for the fact that now their quest for European football next season actually takes a dent. Because the Viola last season, they were actually beaten in the UEFA Europa Conference League, right, to West Ham United, to the eventual winners. And currently now, they still remain 7th position with that result. And, they edge a point closer to Bologna, Roma, and Atalanta, who sit above them. And with the latter, 3 points off, Vincenzo's Italiano side. It was particularly, to say the least, for those who actually followed this particular encounter, it was a drab affair, at the Olimpico Grande Torino. And it was, in fact, basically the hosts, who are now in 10th on the table, who actually came the closest, before, they're the ones who actually came the closest. They were more likely to actually break the deadlock, We saw the fact that, Duvan Zapata saw his strike being choked off, 5 minutes before the halftime break. And the Colombian, fed off a long punt, from Vancha Milankovic-Savic, the home goalkeeper bulldozing his way past, Nikola Milankovic, before crashing an effort into the roof of the net beyond the flailing, Pietro Teresiano, right? But, however, it was just ruled out by a VAR decision for an alleged foul on Milankovic by Sabata, and unfortunately the sides went into the, to the break, level at the interval. And to say the least, yes, it was a foul, and I agree with the video assistant referee, right? It was a foul. And we looked even in the second half, Samuele Ricci, the Torino midfielder who had replaced, the injured Ivan Ilicic on 9 minutes, was dismissed for a second yellow card within 2 minutes. That was just crazy, right? Very insane. And the 22-year-old was first booked for an elbow on Fiorentina winger Nico Gonzalez before a second caution and a red card following dissent after the midfielder was fouled, by Artur, right? He should have just kept his discipline, man. Already, for a fact you're already on a caution. You've been cautioned already. Keep your discipline and keep playing the game. Focus on the game. Don't lose discipline, man. Keep your focus on the game. Because now he almost cost his team. Because now even Juric's side remained, spirited in the second half. Yes, give credit to Torino, man, to the side from Torino. And, the right back, Raul Bellanova, was actually denied by the legs of Tariciano at the near post before Milenkov-Savic, was on hand to actually save a header from Giacomo Bonaventura, the former Milan midfielder. Zapata went close with the header once more in 71 minutes before Gonzalez tested Milenkovic-Savic once again. But unfortunately, however, neither side could actually find that finishing touch, with 3 points, to hold them closer to, those elusive European places. And it's just one of those things, to say the least. It's one of those things. And what can we say? The fact that when you look at the fact that you see these teams, dropping points, the likes of Fiorentina, the likes of, even AC Milan, because now AC Milan are out of contention for European spots. Yes, that's the issue. You cannot afford to drop points at this stage of the season. If you really want to be in serious contention for European football next season, you cannot afford to drop any more points. Serie A. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bubesi Mphathi Mhlaba here. Welcome again to Football is a Religion. Today we will be talking about Serie A action, right? That took place last night between AC Monza as well as AS Roma. So it is basically an historic victory for AS Roma, the team from the nation's capital, right? Because AS Roma now, they've reached 1,300 Serie A victories. They've now won 1,300 Serie A games. Incredible, isn't it? Incredible. That's just incredible. So let us unpack what actually happened at the U-Power Stadium, right? So last night's victory, at the U-Power Stadium over Monza marked an important milestone for AS Roma, right? Because now the club from the capital, as I mentioned earlier on, right, they now sealed their 1,300 victory in Serie A, thanks to goals scored by Lorenzo Pellegrini, Paulo Dybala, Romelu Lukaku, as well as Leandro Paredes, right? And, as informed by the club, the first victory in the Serie A for the Gialla Rossi, dates back to 1929, right? So that's now almost close to a century, just 5 years short of a century. So, which means that AS Roma, their first victory came over 95 years ago. That was basically 95 years ago. So now we're almost really, we approaching a century of victories for AS Roma, the Gialla Rossi. Then the opponent was Cremonese at that time, right? And they were defeated by 9-0 by AS Roma at that time. So you look at the fact that coming into this game, remember AS Roma, were high on confidence, after that victory at home on Monday evening, right? So they were coming into this game rejuvenated. They had so much confidence. And again, Paulo Dybala hitting a stunning free kick. Romelu Lukaku also getting his name on the score sheet as Roma were able to cruise to a thumping victory at Monza, right? So Paulo Dybala, what an important player he has been for AS Roma. I mean, if any person would ever doubt Paulo Dybala's ability, if any person on this earth, you understand, would even doubt the ability of Paulo Dybala, hey man, I think you gotta look at yourself, man. Get yourself checked, because you can never ever doubt this man. This is a quality player. He's a world-class player. Yes, injuries may have hampered his progress over the years. Yes, he might have, maybe some people might see it as a downgrade for the fact that he joined Roma from Juventus, but Roma is still a big club. And like I said, for the fact that they have now won 1,300 games, in their history, it says a lot that AS Roma is a big club, right? So yes, they haven't been doing well over the years, right? But then you can tell that the glory days will be back soon. The likes of Dybala, the likes of Lukaku, the likes of Paredes, and the likes of El Shaarawy are slowly getting the ship sailing once again. And it's only a matter of time where we will see, Roma, being able to compete amongst the best in Serie A, right? So Paulo Dybala was again at the forefront of everything good. For a rejuvenated Roma side, who currently now find themselves at a point of the top four in Serie A. After cruising, to a comfortable 4-1 victory over Monza. And Dybala scored and set up Lukaku for the visitors' second, while Lorenzo Pellegrini, as well as Leandro Paredes, also added their names to the score sheet. So, and then as for the hosts, remember they did beat AC Milan by 4-2 at this very ground, so you could just never underestimate them. But again, it was just a mere consolation from Andrea Carboni. He's the only player who just added a mere consolation for the home side, right? So you look at Paulo Dybala's role in this Juventus team and how he has actually been able to make Juventus click. I mean, not Juventus, I mean AS Roma, I'm sorry. AS Roma, right? Sorry for that mistake. That's my bad, ladies and gentlemen, my bad. You look at the way that Paulo Dybala has been able to make this AS Roma club tick. You understand? Look at the improvement. Look at the way they attack better. Look at the way they are able to penetrate teams on the counter attack. Look at the way they are able to exploit those gaps. That sometimes those teams leave between the midfield and defense. You understand? All because of the brilliance of the Argentine. And Dybala did play, another steering role, to actually propel Roma to a comfortable 4-1 win over Monza in Serie A, right? And another thing is that Roma, now they've registered their third straight win under the guardianship of Daniele De Rossi, since their 4-2 home defeat by Inter Milan, right, in early February. With Dybala, notching a goal and an assist, to move his side into European contention, because now AS Roma, if they're able to keep up with this consistency, if they're able to keep up with this level of momentum that they are showing, right, they will qualify for Champions League. Champions League football is guaranteed for this club from the capital. Lorenzo Pellegrini, Romelu Lukaku, as well as Leandro Paredes, Dybala's compatriot Leandro Paredes, completed the visitor scoring, while Andrea Carboni scored a consolation for the host with 3 minutes to play. That was just a mere consolation. But hey, man, Roma, they should learn to stop conceding goals. Man, they should just they should learn to keep a clean sheet, right? Because look, you're already in control of the game. There's no need for you to give away, cheap goals. And you look at the complexion of the game. Roma, at first, they thought, that they had gone in front. When Brian Kristante's side-footed effort was choked off on 20 minutes after Dybala was judged to have been interfering with play from an offside position. And we also saw that Pellegrini, put the Giallorossi ahead on 38 minutes as he stroked home into the far corner after showing some neat footwork. I mean, that was just brilliant from the Roma captain. That was just brilliant, man. He showed some neat footwork, to work his way into the Monza box. And the second goal followed just 4 minutes later when Lukaku, the on-loan Chelsea striker, swept home Dybala's cross from the left. And then Dybala from provider to goal scorer, just after the hour with a beautiful free kick into the bottom right corner, leaving Michael de Gregro, in the home net collapsing at thin air. What an emphatic victory this was for AS Roma. And then Dybala's compatriot, Leandro Paredes, completed the route with just only 8 minutes remaining as he struck from the penalty spot, after Warren Bondo, was deemed to have fouled, Dean Hudson. And, there was actually still time for the Carboni, the Monza striker, to actually net a mere consolation for Monza as he lashed home a spectacular drive from inside, the left channel that actually caught Miles Svla, out at his near post. And however, with that being said, it was just a little too late, and Roma's fantastic form under, De Rossi, just continues, and the Giallorossi are now up to 5th on the table. Basically, they're just a point of Bologna, who occupy the final top spot in the top 4 race, in the race for the Champions League, right? So, what an incredible victory that is. And let me just tell you something. Dybala is the Viking, man. Yeah, he is the Viking, and you will see what's going to happen, man. If Roma can keep up with this momentum, surely they will qualify for the Champions League next season. They will. Trust. So, as we continue, let's pause here. Yeah, man, here we are. Here we are. I bought a new fresh cut. This. I just cut my hair, guys. So it's a new look, new Monday, new day. Yeah, that's how it is. That's how we roll. We still continue, man. We pick up from where we left off. So we're going straight to the Serie, all right? Bubesi Mpatium Klaba once again here. It's football is a religion, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again, right? Welcome to another edition of Football is a Religion. And we're going to be talking about Serie A, ladies and gentlemen. So there was a big game, a much anticipated clash at the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium between defending champions Napoli, as well as perhaps we could say maybe title challenges, but they are no longer title challenges because right now Inter Milan are basically the runaway leaders. So they were in contention for the title, but since Inter Milan are running away with the title, they've put themselves way, out of contention that they will be taking the Scudetto once again this year. I'm referring to Inter Milan. So Juventus are far off the pace, right? So the game between Napoli as well as Juventus, what a great game of football that was, as expected. Napoli winning by 2-1, but then the result didn't go, as expected, because I was expecting a draw, to say the least, because both of these sides have had, they've had contrasting seasons overall. But the fact that Juventus have really struggled in the past few games, including Napoli. Both teams have really struggled to get the going, in the past few games. Yes, Juventus, they won their last game at home, but it was not convincing at all. Even Napoli haven't really been all too convincing, right? So it came with, huge optimism that, they will be a share of the spoils at the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona. But I am surprised to say the least with the fact that Napoli were able to secure maximum points against Juventus. And yes, it was Giacomo Raspadori who actually snatched a dramatic late victory for the hosts, in a huge Serie A clash. And let's get straight to it. So Napoli, they claimed the hugely important victory over Juventus on Sunday evening, as now they've moved into 7th place in the Serie A standings. Just 4 points off the European places, and basically now they're 8 short of the top 4. And as for Juventus remain 12 points adrift of Inter Milan, who have a game in hand. So basically the result, gave Napoli's caretaker manager Francesco Calzona a first win at the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, right? Remember, there's a difference. It's Stadio in Italian and then it's stadium in English, right? So always grasp the difference between the two. And Giacomo Raspadori, scored a late winner to give Napoli a 2-1 victory over Juventus. So basically, it's actually a result which now moves Inter Milan closer to winning the Serie A once again and keeps the Neapolitans, fading hopes of UEFA Champions League qualification alive, right? And it was the substitute Raspadori who was on hand to actually finish the rebound when Victor Osimhen's 88th minute penalty was saved and restored the home side's advantage. So Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, actually was the one who actually put Napoli ahead, with an excellent first half volley, punishing Juventus for a string of missed chances, before Federico Chiesa's drive, appeared enough to salvage a point for the old lady. And a draw for either of these sides would not be good enough, but that's what I was foreseeing, and it was certainly heading there, yeah? You understand? And yet, Victor Osimhen, he's the one who actually won the penalty through a determined hold-up play. And, that's one thing Victor Osimhen does so well. We saw him doing it for Nigeria at the African Cup of Nations in Cote d'Ivoire. And that's one of his strengths. You understand? Just to be determined and hold up the play and delay and wait for support. And that's exactly what he did in yesterday's game against Juventus, even winning his side a penalty. And yes, Raspadori had other ideas, giving Napoli's caretaker manager Francesco Calzona, a first win at the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona. And now, with that being said, that victory moves Napoli into 7th, just 4 points adrift, of European places. And they're basically 8 short of the top 4. As for Juventus, they remain 12 points adrift of Inter Milan, who have a game in hand. So Juventus, they're far off the pace and they are no longer in contention to clinch the title because Inter Milan are basically runaway with leaders. And think about it, it will require a miracle for Juventus to actually win the league, right? And it will require a miracle for Inter Milan to actually slip up, right? Because Inter Milan, have created some breathing room between themselves as well as Juventus, who are still in second place. And with like less than 15 games to go, we've got like how many games to go till the end of the season? About, more 12 to 13 games to go till the end of the season, so I definitely don't see Inter Milan slipping up. And again, Dusan Vlahovic. Dusan Vlahovic. Again, it was another night to forget for him. Because Vlahovic, entered the match in fantastic form. Scoring 8 goals in his last 5 games. But there was little evidence of that, purple patch, of display, man. As he missed a series of excellent chances in this game, which actually cost Juventus the game. Because like I said earlier on, Napoli, through Kvaratskhelia, they punished Juventus for actually missing so many chances. In the first half alone, he could have scored a hat-trick. He twice missed the target when he was presented with fantastic chances unmarked, as well as hitting the post from a more difficult opening. And in the second half, he was quieter and denied by Alex Meret. The one time a half chance was actually presented, to him, and he couldn't convert. And Vlahovic, we must say, he's an excellent striker, as he has scored 8 goals, in his last 5 games. And it suggests that he is a quality striker. He is a top player, prolific, to say the least. And will no doubt, regard this as one of those games that, he'll have to look back on and actually really improve more in his game. Because his movement was still impressive, to say the least. But the performance like that on a big occasion for Juventus will not be forgotten in a hurry. Because big games like that are for big players, and these are big games that actually make you become very legendary. And my player of the match, my man of the match in this particular encounter was obviously the Georgian, obviously Kvisha, just Kvaratskhelia, Kvaratskhelia, he took his goal excellently, and it was Napoli's most reliable attacking force, moving the ball forward, driving those runs. And, if Calzona can actually get Kvichka, back to his level best, it may be a recipe for getting the Napoli manager's job on a permanent basis. So, to say the least, it was an important victory for Napoli, right? And as for Juventus, their hopes of winning the title are basically diminished. They're over. Straight up. Inter Milan 2, Genoa 1. So, with that being said, in Serie A action, now, that means that Inter Milan are basically running away with the Scudetto. Because now they've moved 15 points clear at the top of the Serie A with the victory over Genoa at the San Siro. So it was Kristjan Asllani, he struck, as well as Alexis Sanchez's, strike from the penalty spot, actually gave Inter Milan a 2-0 lead, up inside 38 minutes, So the penalty resulted of a foul on Nicola Barella, which was converted by the Chilean, right? So Johan Vasquez, pulled one back just after the halftime break, but Inter Milan were able just to hold on to actually record their 9th successive league victory. And this result, now it's actually their 12th victory in a row in all competitions. So now they create some clear breathing room between themselves and second place Juventus by 15 points. And Inter Milan now have won 23 of their 27 Serie A games this season, with their solitary defeat coming back in September. And they've not dropped points since that 1-1 draw against Genoa in the reverse fixture on the 29th of December. So Inter Milan have pretty been on a decent run of form from this particular moment in time, and clearly they are running away with the title. I mean, there's no way any other team is going to catch up to them right now at this particular moment in time. And it's just a matter of time where we will see, the fact that it will be confirmed in the next games or so that Inter Milan are the champions of Italy once again. And what I can just say is that the fact that look, man, there's just like There's no change, because the Serie A table and the top goal scorers, we just look at the fact that there's not much change in the Serie A table because we did see a draw between Napoli and Torino, on Friday evening at the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, So little has actually changed in the Serie A standings, after Napoli drew 1-1, with Torino on Friday evening, as basically, both teams, remained rooted to the positions, that they held coming into the game in 7th and 10th, respectively. So Napoli versus Torino was the first match in, match day 28th of the Serie A fixtures, and the rest of which, will take place over the course of the weekend, concluding with Lazio's visit from, Udinese on Monday evening. You understand? So what I can just tell you is that, both Napoli and Torino are just a point better off, each other than they were at the beginning of the evening, because both sides, could still be overtaken by other teams below them by the end of the weekend, right? Napoli being held to a draw is particularly good news for Fiorentina in 8th and Atalanta in 6th. And Fiorentina, could fit themselves back into 7th with victory over Roma. It won't be easy on Sunday evening. While Atalanta, cannot drop any further down the table regardless of their result against Juventus at the Allianz Stadium, also on Sunday evening. So Torino, picking up a point is a relatively good news for Monza and Lazio, whilst Monza, could now jump, into the top half with a runaway, victory against Genoa on Saturday, while Lazio are now under threat, no threat of actually slipping below their position in 9th. In terms of like the Serie A top goal scorers, Kvaratskhelia is now up to 10 for the season in the league. He joins Inter Milan's Marcus Thuram, Bologna's Joshua Zirkzee, Roma's Romelu Lukaku, as well as Frosinone, Juventus' lonely Matthias Sule, who have the same tally. Victor Osimhen was not able to find the net against Torino, so his haul of goals this season still stands at 11, just above the aforementioned attackers. Lautaro Martinez still comfortably leads the division with 23 goals in the 2023-2024 season. So, look, from this game, between Napoli and Torino, what I can just say, the Partenopei, they were just held by a coachless Torino once again, because Napoli and Torino shared the points at the Stadio Maradona in Serie A, on Friday evening, following strikes by Kvaratskhelia as well as Antonio Sarabia. But it was actually the hosts, who were disappointed not to come away with victory on home turf. And the Partenopei, were without Hans Kajuste as well as Cyril Ngonge, through injury, but they were able to welcome back Amir Ramani back into the matchday squad. And Torino had to do without their coach on the touchline, who served the second game of his 2-match ban. Samuele Ricci was also suspended, while, Ivan Ilicic, Matteo Lovato, Per Shoes, as well as Adrian Tamize, missed out through injury. So it was just that particular moment of, the season where, Napoli's woes do continue. They just did not display any sort of form that they had last season, which eventually made them become the champions of Italy after 36 years, right? So Napoli's first serious, opportunity of the game, came after the quarter of an hour. Some tidy work from, Matteo Politano in the central area provided an opportunity to free Kvaratskhelia in the area, who evaded Ricardo Rodriguez's sliding challenge but fired the shot straight towards the onrushing, goalkeeper Vanjo Milankovic-Savic one-on-one, right? So what can I say? From that particular moment in time, Osimhen also had another decent chance to put Napoli ahead following an inch-perfect, delivery of the right flank, from Anguissa, but the Nigerian's header, ended up coming off his shoulder and sailed wide, for a goal kick. And on the other side, basically this game was pretty much balanced. It was pretty much, end to end, because we also did see the Napoli goalkeeper, Alex Meret, was also called into action for the first time, just shy of the half hour mark. We saw Duvan Zapata, fired a venomous snapshot, from the edge of the area after Torino pinched possession in the middle of the park, which required quick reactions, as well as a strong wrist, from the Partenopei, stopper to actually keep the scores level. Play was also halted, on several occasions. Around the 30th minute, we saw Giovanni Di Lorenzo, look to be struggling with his ankle after a collision with Zapata, and then Alessandro, Bigiomo, went down after coming together with Matteo Politano. Both were, able to continue in the end, after on-pitch treatment. Ricardo Rodriguez, also the Swiss left back, had a decent opportunity from a free kick in an inviting area, just outside the D of Napoli's area, penalty area to say the least. But his shot just clipped the wall and sailed wide for a corner. And then Napoli cleared and then broke with Kvaratskhelia, who launched an ambitious lob from halfway line, which did not pay off in the way he had been hoping. It was that kind of a game, to say the least, where, both teams were just relying more on individual brilliance. They were just relying more on counterattacks. Both teams were just relying more on, errors being made by both sides in the middle of the park. That's what you could tell from this particular encounter, that both teams were not, really, threatening like that the way they were supposed to. Because, yes, even though shortly afterwards, the Georgian had another great opportunity in the area, he moved well to actually get himself in front of his defender before placing decent header on target. And Milankovic-Savic, did so well to keep him out again. Though, neither team, could apply the finishing touches in the final third, like I mentioned, because it was Napoli who actually enjoyed the better of the chances by the interval. And Torino came out, of the second half with a new lease of life. And it was they who actually showed the more encouraging signs, in the opening exchanges of the second half. That being said, it was Napoli, who would go to draw first blood, in an end-to-end maneuver. Juan Jesus dispossessed Vlasic in the middle of the park before launching a Panope, counter-attack. Mario Rui, made a long run overlap and received the ball and, sent in a perfect delivery in towards the front post where Kvaratskhelia, arrived in time to actually poke home for 1-0 to put the hosts ahead. And almost immediately afterwards, however, Torino were level. It was Kividas, Genites, his corner, who actually was able just to take a few touches, off, heads in the area before substitute Sanabria, launched himself, up for an acrobatic bicycle kick on the edge of the penalty area. So Napoli, protested for offside later onwards, but, the video assistant referee, showed no sort of evidence to actually rule the goal out and saw Torino, back level on 1-1. You understand? And Napoli, from that particular moment in time, had a couple of chances from a series of corners around the 75th minute, including one from Osimhen and then a later one from Juan Jesus, both which required intervention from Milankovic, Savic. It was actually Napoli entering the final stages of the game where Kvaratskhelia again looked destined, to actually get the winning goal, with some sort of his efforts. But, Torino continued to defend their area superbly well, even if Milankovic-Savic, was almost beaten by a cross shot from the Georgian 4 minutes from time. And Napoli found themselves relatively frustrated by time to time. Daniele Orsato, blew for full time. And at that particular moment in time, they barely had, the ball in their own half for the final 10 or 15 minutes of play. But credit must go to the away side, Torino, who put in another resilient defensive display. And this result now still finds Napoli, in 7th, but the Serie A standings as the result, while Torino are still in 10th, and, they both could be knocked down again, depending on how other results go over the course of the weekend, so it'll just depend. So, Bologna 0, Inter Milan 1. So yeah, man, Inter Milan, this was just one of those games where Inter Milan, man, they were just not at their deadliest best, But again, Inter Milan, proved to be, impossible to stop against Bologna, even if it was just a matter of that they were just not at it. They didn't quite produce, the best football. And what I can just say is that, the game against Bologna, looked like it would be an interesting test for both teams, right? Because Bologna, facing the league leaders, meant seeing just how formidable, they have become at the Stadio Rinaldo Dallara, playing in their home stadium. The Ross Blue, had only lost one match of the season against AC Milan on the opening day of the season. And this was like the bedrock of Emilian's team's surprise push for Champions League football next season. And for Inter Milan, Bologna, what can I just say about Bologna, man? Bologna would be one of those sternest tests in the course of them, clinching another, Serie A title, based on their winning streak, that has like far lasted for all of 2024. So again, Inter Milan were able just to prove impossible to stop against Bologna, against their opponents away from home. And Bologna did certainly hold up their end. Thiago Motta's team, played an eye-catching and effective style of football to cause Inter problems. Meanwhile, Inter were not quite, their usual selves. This was certainly, at least, party to the result of some high-profile absentees, from the starting 11, which include Lautaro Martinez, Federico De Marco, Benjamin Pavard, as well as Marcus Thuram. They all got a rest. So therefore, definitely you would assume that on paper, perhaps, all the dynamics were there for Inter's winning run to finally come to an end. But give credit once again to the coach, Simone Inzaghi, because it was basically another mastermind, of some producing a real winning machine for much of the campaign so far. And with the fixtures piling up and the need to actually rotate the squad, a match as tough as yesterday's game against Bologna, could have actually proven a bridge too far. And a few would have actually held a loss in such a tough away stadium against Inter. But the Nerazzurri, just kept anyway. They kept flying anyway. Even this high-flying Bologna, did not find the solution to stop them. And Inter's win, came from the foundation of a rock-solid defense. It was yet another clean sheet in the Serie A for the Nerazzurri and for Jan Sommer. And at the end of the day, the Nerazzurri found a way to be decisive. It was actually an unlikely goal scorer who untimely took the spoils for Inter Milan. It was Jan Besek, who actually got the winning goal for Inter Milan to actually see them extend their lead at the top of the table. But it just took one moment for the German to head in an excellent Alessandro Bastoni cross, and it was yet another win for Inter Milan in 2024. Right, continuing with Serie A action. Genoa 2, Monza 3. So basically, it was a 5-goal Marazzi thriller, right, between Genoa as well as Monza. And these are two sides that are basically, what can I say? One side is fighting for a spot in European football next season. Basically, the other is still also like challenging just to, finish up in the top half of the Serie A table, right? So Monza emerged with 3 points from Marazzi, after a 3-2 thriller, including a spectacular goal from Danny Mota Carvalho, a scissor kick volley despite the Genoa fight back. And this was like a head-to-head in mid-table for 11th place. Johan Vasquez, set out a ban with injured Rijakiano, Habs, David Anyeke, as well as Alan Maturo. While Gianluca Cabrari and Samuel Vinato, didn't really make the trip, right? So, but Armando Izzo returned from suspension 4 months away side. And coming into this game, it was a very aggressive start from the hosts. But Monza, took the lead instead when Andrea Colpani nodded a cross, at the back of the post from Matteo Pessina to actually turn in from 4 yards. And from that particular moment in time, it has we often see this combination a lot of the times between Andrea Colpani as well as Matteo Pessina. They combine as far and near post to actually give Monza the lead at Genoa. And we saw Kolpani added another assist, after a corner was taken short, floating across in the area for an acrobatic and spectacular Danny Mota Carvalho flying scissor kick, volley into the far bottom corner. What a brilliant goal that was. Perhaps one of the goals of the season. That was an insane acrobatic effort at the end of a well-worked corner by Monza. And from that particular moment in time, Kolpani was he was just unlucky not to make it 3-0 because it was all Monza from that particular moment in time. And Kolpani was just unlucky just to not make it 3-0 on 26 minutes. His powerful curler, thumping the far post, after a slalom, through defenders. And Alessandro, Vokiliako, failed to get his head to a corner, then struggled to reach a smart, Milan Badic, crossfield pass. And Genoa, changed to a 4-3-3 formation during the first half, then made a triple substitution at the break to actually just shake things up. And, ironically, it did pay off, as the corner was cushioned, back, towards Michel De Greggio by Pablo Mari from 6 yards out. But VAR, showed that it was the Monza defender's arm. Albert Goodmanson, won the argument with Matteo Retegui, to take it. His penalty was parried by De Greggio, but, he was also the quickest to turn in the rebound. Samuel Brindelli, risked an own goal to prevent Goodmanson turning in a second at the back post, and Genoa did complete the comeback to actually make it 2-2. And what an incredible game of football there was, coming back from 2-0 down. And that was an audacious move from the Genoa coach, to actually make a triple substitution while your team is down by 2-0 at home. It really was a huge risk, and it tells you that as a coach, you just need to trust your instincts and trust your gut. That's what a touchline genius does. So Samuele Birindelli, risked an own goal to prevent Goodmanson turning in a second at the back post, and Genoa did complete the comeback from that particular moment in time. So we saw Retegui, Rob John Daniel, Akbar Akpro, in the midfield, and Vitinha bent, the left foot finish, into the far bottom corner from just inside the box, steering in between two Marseille players, and it was the ex-Marseille striker's first goal in the Genoa, colours. And it was actually a great goal, to say the least. It was like one of the sweetest of finishes from Vitinha, which brought Genoa level, from a 2-goal deficit. And the tide had completely, turned around, and Genoa nearly went in front moments later. It would have been an incredible comeback, to actually come back from a 2-0 deficit. While it all looked over, it could have even been 3, but, Genoa showed so much character, and they actually showed so much, resilience, and they really showed so much fight in the second half to actually get back into the game from a 2-0, deficit. And the tide had turned, and Genoa nearly went in front moments later. We saw De Greggio, he parried, a deflected Ruslan Malinkowski, strike, and Danny Mota Carvalho preventing Milan Badic, from getting in on the rebound. However, Monza's substitutes made the difference too, and I guess that's what a coach does. Coaches, they have this instinct in them to say, look, we're just going to make those replacements, and once we make those replacements, those adjustments, hopefully they will give us a change. And that's exactly what we saw with both teams, because Monza also made substitutions, and both those substitutions made a difference, and it combined. Those substitutions were actually responsible for the combination to actually restore their lead. Valentin Carboni, bursted into the box, with a given goal, forced one-handed save from Joseph Martinez with Daniel Maldini ready to meet the rebound, and Monza were back in front through the AC Milan loanee Daniel Maldini. And it was actually a great finish. It was a great forward move, finished by the AC Milan loanee, right? The son of the legendary Pablo, Maldini. And Genoa were throwing everything at Monza to get back into the game, but with a series of crosses and blocks. But Rafael Palladino's men, held on for all 3 points, which was very crucial away from home. And it goes without saying that it was an entertaining game of football, to say the least, and great fight from Genoa. Also great fight once again from, it was also another great fight once again from, Monza to actually restore their advantage. And it was just one of those games of football that you would, you didn't want to miss. And for the fact that, look, It's two teams that are really not fashionable. It's not really the big clubs like Inter or AC Milan, but certainly it was an entertaining game of football. We did really see so much, great football being played. We saw so much football being played at a high tempo, at a high intensity, and the 5-goal thriller was a proof. It was proof of that. And I hope that we're gonna continue to see more of this. In the upcoming weeks. With regards to the fact that hopefully these teams can continue playing at this high level. And it's a matter of fact that maybe next season, we might see one of these teams, challenging for, a spot in Europe to play European football in the other season. Or maybe we can see a changing fortunes for one of these sides, because there are promises, but it's just a matter of consistency, to say the least. And yeah, man, Fiorentina 2. The next game was between Fiorentina as well as Daniele De Rossi's AS Roma. And it was a 2-2 draw between Fiorentina as well as AS Roma. And remember, Roma are basically an informed side coming into this one. But what I can tell is that, their coach, Daniele De Rossi, never gives up. He's a guy who's he's willing to fight tooth and nail to actually get the positive results, the results that are, wanted by him and his side. So Fiorentina, saw Cristiano Beraghi's penalty saved by Mils Sliver, and Diego Llorente completed the Roma comeback with the last kick of the game for a dramatic 2-2 draw. So both teams were actually fresh from their UEFA victories on Thursday, as we saw the Viola beat Maccabi Haifa by 4-3, and the Giallorossi, crushed Brighton Hove Albion 4-0. Andrea Belotti, faced his former club with Lucas Beltran suspended. Kristjan Kwame was also injured. Remember, Kristjan Kwame did contract malaria, following Cote d'Ivoire's triumph at the African Cup of Nations, so he's out for some time. And Lucas, Martinez, Autara, Quadra, and Artur Melo returned to the squad. Rasmus Christensen, sat out for a ban, with Tammy Abraham the only one left out on treatment. So they switched from a 3-5-2. They switched to a 3-5-2 formation. I'm referring to the away side, and it was actually a great game of football. Wonderful, man. It was end-to-end stuff. There was so much balance. It was actually excellent play from both sides. Both sides showed audacity. Both sides really wanted to get all 3 points. Both sides understood that, lots is at stake, to actually finish, in a comfortable spot, to actually ensure that maybe they play Champions League football or Europa League football. Basically both of these sides have got different objectives. Roma, I'm sure they still fancy qualifying for next season's Champions League, even though Europa League is where they're destined to play. And as for Fiorentina, I'm sure they fancy themselves playing in the UEFA Europa League next season. And Romelu Lukaku, forced a wonderful save, from, Pietro Terracciano, on Paulo Dybala's pass after 4 minutes. But it was actually the host who took the lead. We saw Maxim Lopez's corner was flicked on by Nico Gonzalez, as well as Luca Ranieri, got there ahead of Ivan Ndika to nod in at the far post. And from that particular moment in time, we saw the Viola, they just kept on pushing. As Rolando Mandragora, curled wide off the top corner, and Belotti forced the save from Miles Sliver, at the tight angle. From that particular moment in time, you could tell that it was all Fiorentina in this particular game. It was just all for Fiorentina. Fiorentina was so dominant; they had the better of the chances. You could see they were more likely to actually get to find the back of the net first before their visiting opponents, Roma. And we saw Gianluca Mancini was booked earlier on for taking down Riccardo, Sotil, and risked a second for clipping Belotti's ankle on 27 minutes. And Daniele De Rossi, saw he was on his last warning and held the defender off. Even Ndika, made a decisive interception with two Fiorentina sliding in to meet, Biraghi's cross, as Hussein Ola didn't get enough curl on his finish, but Sotil, missed a free header after Belotti knocked it down for him. And Fiorentina thought it was actually 2-0 on 38 minutes when Belotti pounced on a ricochet with a volley from a tight angle, but Leandro Paredes was there, for a decisive goal line clearance. And like I said, man, it could have even been 4-0 long time ago. Roma were just outplayed, were completely outplayed in the first 20 to 30 minutes of the game. Roma were outplayed, and Fiorentina really looked like a team that really wanted the 3 points. They were likely to get the 3 points, playing at home, and they did capitalize on that home ground advantage with the dominant display. Moments later, Ndika also got back for a crucial block on Giancomo, Bonaventura's finish after he was sent clear on goal by Nico Gonzalez. Roma came out, for the second half with the same personnel but moved to a 4-3-3 formation because they could see that 3-5-2 formation was just not working. So they had to, change things up, switch the gears a bit so that now they could be able to get back into the game, perhaps secure all the 3 points. And we saw Belotti, steered a header well wide from a corner, but, Teresiano, made it two. Had to make 2 tricky saves from Bayern, Cristante in a quick succession. And as for AS Roma, the change of system definitely made a difference, as I said, as predicted. Because when Dybala surged forward, he spread it down the left for Angelino, whose cross was deflected off Ranieri to turn it in, into an accidental assist for Uwa's free header from 12 yards. Roma nearly, turned it around moments later as Cristante threw himself at the Angelino cross but just failed to connect from 6 yards. It was all Roma in the second half, and that's what I say, as a coach, you just need to be clever. If you can see a particular system is not working, then change it. Don't be afraid to make those decisions. And you would think that Roma was going to take the lead. But however, Fiorentina restored their advantage. After some chaotic defending at the back, it was very chaotic and very poor defending from AS Roma. On the Biraghi cross, as Belotti nodded it down against his former side, Uwa made a half-hearted attempt to actually clear, but Mandragora flicked it in off the outside of the left boot from 6 yards. And, that would have been a great result for Fiorentina, had they been able to cling on and hold on for the 3 points. Fiorentina were also awarded a penalty. It was very soft, to say the least. It was a very soft penalty, but they were still awarded a penalty. Yes, there was contact, but it was very soft, to be honest with you guys. Very soft. Yeah, but we saw, Paredes lightly tugged Belotti's shirt as the striker turned in, his former teammate. However, after his heroics in the Europa League shootout against Feyenoord, Mile Sliva again proved himself by keeping out the Biraghi spot kick. And it also confirmed the Viola's problems, having failed to convert 4 penalties in the Serie A this season. That's just crazy, man. It's insane. And look, it cost them all the 3 points because now their hopes of actually featuring in the Europa League next season are basically dashed. And it was unbelievable because this left it open. The game was still very much pretty in the balance, and it left it open, and Lorenzo Pellegrini fired straight at, Teresiano after a long period of Roma pressure. Everybody went up, for the final corner deep in the stoppage time, and it was actually clear. It was not cleared properly. So Ndika, the Ivorian African Cup of Nations winner, nodded down the cross, and Diego Llorente smashed the volley into the roof of the net to actually get a equalizer for the team from the capital. And yeah, it leaves Roma 3 points off Bologna in 4th place, but Fiorentina remain in 8th. So it's all their fault, Fiorentina. It's their fault. They should have done better. They should have converted their chances because they were more dominant. They were the much better side, for most periods of the game. Even though Roma were the better side in the second half, based on the fact that Roma, in the second half, they had more of the ball, and the fact that they created more opportunities in the second half. So Fiorentina should have just converted some of the chances that they had. They really had so many chances. I mean, compared to Roma, they had 15 chances. They had, which is just 5 more than AS Roma. You understand? Only 5 of those shots were on target. So Fiorentina have themselves to blame. Honestly, they really have themselves to blame, and they need to work more on that. You understand? So it's a decent result for Roma away from home. It still keeps them well in contention to qualify for the Champions League. And let me just say it, it's like that particular moment in time where you just cannot afford to actually, drop points at this particular moment in time of the season. Because if you continue to drop points, perhaps you will be sorry. So Roma really need to also be careful. Fiorentina as well also need to be careful, because if they want to qualify for the Europa League next season, they need to ensure that they don't drop points like they just did, and they need to really convert those chances. So Juventus, the next game, moving on to the next game, we go straight back to Turin. Turin, it was a Juventus 2, Atalanta 2. And yeah, man, it was actually Coop who stole the Bianconeri at the Allianz Stadium, you know. So once again, the reason why I say Inter Milan are the runaway leaders is because, again, Juventus have dropped points once again. So they're basically out of the title race. Juventus and AC Milan are out of the title race. So Inter Milan are basically the winners of the Serie A, I can say. Even though it hasn't been confirmed, but of course they are the winners, man. They've won the Serie A, you know. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's no way Inter Milan are going to drop any points soon. And they're not going to make it slip. They will be stupid enough to make it slip. So Inter Milan are the champions, the 2023-2024 champions of the Serie A of Italy. So Juventus, once again, they dropped down to third place behind AC Milan. After TN, Coupe Miners, scored a brace, which actually gave Atalanta a much-needed point away from home, cancelling out Andrea Cambiaso as well as Eric Milik comeback. The Bianconeri had just like one win in 6 rounds, and Dusan Vlahovic was suspended for this game, with Adrian Rabiot, Carlos Alcaraz, Mattia Perin, Mattia, Deschilio also injured, but Weston McKennie returned to the midfield after dislocating his shoulder. And we saw that Ladea, were without a win since February the 17th, managing just 1 point from 3 Serie A games, plus Wednesday's 1-1 draw, away to Sporting Lisbon in Portugal in the Europa League. Emil Holm, set out with a ban, with squad rotation bringing in Tien Coupe Miners as well as Gianluca Scamacca back into the squad. And how did things actually unfold in this particular game at the Allianz Stadium? It was actually going to be an interesting encounter, and we were evenly poised for, a tough battle between these two sides. And we saw Marco, Garaseshi, needed to be on his toes with the reaction save on Fabio Miretti's header at the near post on a Federico Chiesa cross. We saw Gianluca Scamacca hesitated on a counter-attack, allowed Miretti to actually cut him off, while Danilo as well as Milik couldn't keep their shots down. And Atalanta took the lead with an intelligent free kick routine, as we saw Mario Pasalic, rolled it across for Tien Coupe Miners to actually sweep in for the first time with the inside of his left foot, from just inside the penalty area. And Juventus, it left the Allianz Stadium shell-shocked. Juventus was shell-shocked. And for the fact that, Atalanta were able to score against the run of play, and give credit once again to the Dutchman, Coupe Miners firing Atalanta ahead, at the Allianz Stadium away from home. And shortly after the restart, we saw Eric Milik, was offside before Karaneshi, got down for the one-handed save on Chiesa, denying Federico Chiesa once again, and then Chiesa flashed an angle drive across the face of goal. He was just unlucky. Great shot, great vision. However, it just flashed across, the face of goal. Maybe it just had too much power. Maybe, and again, Scamacca on the other end for Atalanta, we saw Scamacca, thought he had made it 2-0 when a ferocious strike was palmed away by Wojciech Szczesny at full stretch. But the striker also got back for a decisive defensive tackle on Miretti. And we saw Nigeria's, African Cup of Nations runner-up, Ademola Lookman, drilled wide, and Chiesa's curler was off target. But Juventus did equalize with the well-worked move. We saw Chiesa, he won back possession inside his own half, found Weston McKennie for the Americans through ball, and Cambiaso toe-poked it inside the on-rushing Karaneshi. Look, what I can just say about Weston McKennie, and I've said this many times, he has been very key for Juventus. I mean, you just look at that well-weighted pass to actually assist the youngster Cambiaso. What a well-weighted pass that was. It was a great well-weighted pass, and it tells you about the Americans' impact for the Bianconeri. And Cambiaso was actually eager for another. However, Cambiaso was just unlucky that he fired over after a corner kick when Juventus turned it around completely moments later. It was another McKennie assist this time around, using his chest, to actually cushion a Samuel, Elling Jr. cross from the left. Milik let it bounce and thumped it in on the half volley from 12 yards out, and it was actually his first Serie A goal for the Polish. The Polish scored his first Serie A goal in 5 months. So Juventus, what a stunning comeback it was for them, scoring 2 goals in 4 minutes and to actually turn around the game. They came back from a 1-0 deficit to actually jump ahead of AC Milan in second place for that particular moment in time. And however, it was not done. The game was not done and dusted, and Atalanta got back on level terms too, as Barad Jim City's slide rule pass released Koop Miners to actually sweep past Wojciech Szczesny, and it was actually a brace for the Dutch international, and the game remained wide open with both teams going for it, but stoppages, Moise Kean as well as Federico Gatti both went for the same header on the Chiesa cross, and that was basically the last that we saw in terms of action for the Bianconeri. And yeah, that point doesn't do much for Juventus, to be honest. It really does not do much for them. Yeah, it leaves them in third place. So Champions League qualification is just one thing they have to hope for. They just need to focus on, because they definitely out of the title race. And then straight to the San Siro. AC Milan 1, Empoli 0. So it was a goal from the American once again, Kristjan Pulisic, which proved to be enough. It proved to make the difference for, the Rossoneri. And AC Milan, again, got the victory with the far from convincing performance. I guess that has been the story for, AC Milan. They were just able to squeeze past Empoli with the deflected Kristjan Pulisic effort. Once again, I guess that has just been the story for, the Rossoneri. It has just been scrappy wins. Just scrappy wins. Just like Barcelona in La Liga. Scrappy wins. Not convincing victories. Just scrappy wins. Rafael Leao as well as Alessandro Florenzi were actually suspended for this particular encounter, with Tommaso Pobega, injured, and then Luka Jovic returned from his 2-match ban, and Fikayo Tomori got the first start since that injury that he suffered in late December. And the Tuscans were revitalized under David Nicola, but they lost to Cagliari after 3 wins as many draws as they have gotten as well. So how the game actually started, it was actually an aggressive start, from the hosts. We saw Pulisic as well as Noah Okafor, tested Elia Gabriel, while they repeatedly put low crosses in by the line. Adrian, Esmagili, as well as Sebastiano Luperto, always getting there to first clear the ball out. We saw Okafor, got down the left on an Ismail Benacer pass, pulling back to the edge of the area for Pulisic, whose first time shot was deflected past, Gabriel, of Luperto. Initially, the offside flag went up, but, it was actually overruled by the VAR as Okafor timed his run to perfection. To actually make matters worse for Empoli, they also lost Ismagili, to a muscular injury, moments later. And we saw Malik, Tiao risked an own goal intercepting Lebardo Kakase's cross from 6 yards out, while Samuel Chikwueze failed to actually make the most of a promising move with the week finished. That has just been the story of the Nigerian man. He's just really hasn't been able to hit the ground running for AC Milan. Yes, he did get the winning goal against Newcastle United in the UEFA Champions League group stages, but apart from that, he hasn't just been firing for the Rossoneri. But hopefully, as time goes by, he will be able to settle in and actually start firing for the Italian giants, and actually start becoming more of a talisman like what we saw at Villarreal, and actually become more consistent in terms of his performance. However, we saw also Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He surged forward to actually sting, Gabriel's gloves from outside the area. While, on the other hand, we saw David, Calabria couldn't just keep his header down on an Okafor cross to hit to the back post. And for the fact that AC Milan, yes, they were creating some sort of half chances, to actually win the game, the game was still wide open, with the scores just at 1-0. Empoli actually remained in it, and we saw Empoli really threatening late on. We saw Pierre Kalulu, come to rescue following a TL error, but Matteo Destro was offside as his header thumped the woodwork. Basically, that was the best that we have seen from the visitors. And the visitors really should have equalized again on 86 minutes, when a corner found Destro totally unmarked, but his weak free header was just straight at Mike Magnan. And the last kick of the game saw Chikwueze force a low save out of Gabriel at the foot of the near post. And that was basically much it, from AC Milan. Yes, it's a great victory for them. It's an important 3 points for them, but not convincing at all. Basically, really not convincing at all. And yeah, Lecce, the other Serie A clash was Lecce 1, Hellas Verona 0. So, yeah, what can I just say, man? Hellas Verona, they're flying with Foloruncho. Okay? And yeah, man, it was just a deflected, Michael Foloruncho effort, which actually proved to be decisive, allowing Verona to actually climb out of the bottom three and leapfrog Lecce in the table. So, the other results this weekend put even more pressure on the two teams in the relegation dogfight. The hosts, have lost Mohamed Kabal for the rest of the season with a torn ACL, while Hellas, had Powell Dae Dowis, suspended. While Napoli owned for Loruncho, turned the free header over, from a corner, and Lorenzo Montipo came rushing off his line to actually parry from Lamek Banda, but Verona took the lead with a stroke of luck. And I guess in football, that's what you need sometimes. You just need a stroke of luck. Thomas Sasluf, found for Loruncho outside the area, and the snapshot took a decisive deflection of the Federico Bashiroto, to squirm into the near bottom corner past, Vladimiro Falcone's fingertips. And Lecce were awarded a penalty on 23 minutes, with Lamek Banda's curler was deflected, by Giancomo Magnani's hand. However, it was actually revoked following video assistant referee on-field review. And Magnani's arms were flush to the body, and there was nothing more he could have done to avoid contact. So basically, it's like that type of situation where your hands are basically in a natural position. So there's nothing much you could do about that. So yeah, and I agree with the VAR, great refereeing from the VAR. And the hosts from that particular moment in time had a series of corners with deflections forcing Lorenzo Montipo, to fingertip over the ball. We saw the unclipped vest, curler went over to thump the woodwork. You saw Montipo made a great reaction save just before the halftime to deny, Nikola Kristovic glancing header from 10 yards out. Lecce continued to pull forward after the break with a series of corners and set plays, but they failed to get any real dangerous efforts on target as Roberto Piccoli accidentally charged down an attempt from teammate Kristovic. It was actually an intense finale, ending in a brawl between Thomas Henry as well as Marin, Pongracic, which resulted in the Verona striker's red card.